All right, I just wanted to check in with Mt-gls because I wanted to make another little entry in there. Um, I've been talking about sort of a thing of making a series of videos on um, British Columbian history, um, probably more British Columbian literature, Canadian literature. Um, Uh, Hopefully kind of a mixture of the two because I still need to really educate myself, and a part of that education is going to be nonfiction as well as the art of my country. Um, and this is to become kind of a goal of being more engaged with my country, more aware of my surroundings, not kind of sailing through it kind of as a disembodied head in literature, in art, but that this is actually vital stuff that is important to how we are as people, not just myself. Uh, and on the note of not just myself, I read a review of A.O. Scott's Better Living Through Criticism, which um, by Sam Sachs. He did a review, and I've read the book and sort of did my own review, where I have to admit that probably as I read it, I kind of embraced the idea of like everybody's a critic. That responding to art is being a critic. That um, even making the choice not to engage with the art, but just to say it's fun, is in some ways being is a non-choice is a choice. Um, and But I thought Sachs had some interesting points, and especially at the very last paragraph, where this is Sachs saying this. Um, Scott is right that critical thinking makes engagement with the arts deeper and more interesting. But the self appointed few who make that complicated engagement the centerpiece of their lives are motivated by a calling rather than a wish for self improvement. Perhaps the difference is perhaps the difference is this: they feel that they owe more to art than art owes to them, which um the self-appointed few, which can be like slightly self-mocking, but also can be like, hey, this is a calling, this is a priesthood of some sort. And I am not a professional critic. I um I'm somebody who spends a lot of my that's what I spend a lot of my free time doing, is reading and responding to art, but I'm not getting paid for it. Um, I would say it is sort of the centerpiece of my life. But it's interesting because a lot of the talk that happens on BookTube and on just culture in general is that idea of self improvement, of improving myself, um, which is one of those things where it's interesting that Sachs is not saying is saying, instead of the viewer, the person, the critic, it's the art that is owed all that is owed the a call that calling to respond to art, to illuminate art, um, which is interesting place to put the onus. I mean, I guess if you're focused on the text, that is where it should be. I wonder if a different critic might also say that it's owed to the culture in general, like to for me to illuminate what this art is doing. That I'm not so much a booster for the art. I'm not the devotion isn't to the art, but to my culture, to the world around me. The greater world is where is worthy of focus, and that if I develop my skills, it is to better serve the art, better serve the culture. Um, you know, because I'm talking about doing this of like reading Canadian works, reading British Columbian works, um, and there is a strong thing there if I want to develop my chops. I want to develop a skill and a grounding in it. But it's like, is it just to kind of aggrandize myself that I'm doing this, or am I doing it so that I am opening up more interesting conversations about my culture to in the hopes of serving it, um, elucidating it, of letting more people know about it, the goods and the bads. Um, so it's interesting. I've got certain phrases in my head of a body of work from Matthew over at Mayberry Books, talking about like, okay, this is a body of work. I'm not going to get bogged down by my first video on Canadian stuff. It's going to be amazing. It has to be amazing. It has to be super in depth. It's like, no, this is a body of work. I'm starting. I'm starting. It's going to shape into something, whatever that might be. I'll try and assess and reassess as I go along. So there's that idea. Um, there is the A.O. Scott better living through criticism being a better individual person through 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 devoting yourself to learning something. But then yeah, there's this thing about, you know, what they owe them, what who owes, like I owe, that they feel that they owe more to art than art owes to them. Um, which is like, that's one of those things of like, I'm looking at something that's bigger than myself, and that is owed more. That is more important. That in the long run, it's more important. Uh, it's more important what the art or the culture is than it is me as an individual in that. And that if you keep that in perspective, you're not going to shove yourself in the center of everything that you talk and think about, but maybe stand to one side and really give it center space. And that might actually be, that will give a wider view in general and a wider scope for discussion and stuff like that. So yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, these are the sort of things that I want to think about as I'm going along uh, my channel, and not getting so hung up on it being my channel, my work, my body of work, but just like, hey, it's not about me. It's another phrase. It's not about me. And so I'm not getting so caught up in my ego of it that if someone comes along and says, yeah, it's like, well, it's not about me. If you don't like it, that's fine. I'm not going to invest all my own self-worth into this as well. That it's not about self, as I yak to myself. But it's like I'm trying to work this stuff out in my very slow and painful fashion. So yeah, it's not about me. Body of work, owing more to the art than art owes to them, and better living through criticism. All right, I will leave it there. More videos later.